Hello, hello everyone. I'm Charlie Martinez, aka Omachos_X34, and I'm here speaking with Lauren on discussing about how movies and films portray people on the spectrum compared to how they portray people in real life that are on the spectrum. Hello, Lauren. It's nice to have you here today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Let's just get down into the subject and start with a few questions here based on the subject we're talking about today. First question would have to be, what are your thoughts about films like Music and the TV show Good Doctor in terms of how they cast non-autistic actors, and do you believe that it will be more authentic towards people on the spectrum in real life if they cast people on the spectrum themselves?
Well, this is definitely a two-part question. So, how do I feel when non-autistic actors and play autistic roles in films? I think is the first question. And I have to say that it does make me rather uncomfortable because I don't think we're really at a place where holistics understand the autistic experience. And even more, there are so many autistic actors out there who aren't receiving roles, due in large to the fact that accommodations and supports are not provided for on the set. So it's very hard. It can be very hard for autistic actors to navigate different sets and different places. So there's a lot of balance there when it comes to burnout, overload, overstimulation. Those accommodations and supports are supposed to be provided by law, but they aren't. And instead, I guess people take a more simple route in terms of money, perhaps, and ease, and they hire non-autistic actors. I'm sure there are also other reasons for hiring non-autistic actors, but I'll stop there at that. And then to answer your other question about whether or not non-autistic actors can truly represent and embody an autistic role, I think that it's very hard to do that at this point in time. There's so much misinformation out there about autistics, how we feel, think, behave, and even then, there is no single way an autistic person does that. But with the amount of misinformation out there behind autistic just ways of living life. With all that information, most actors falsely portray autistics and fall into stereotypes. This does well, I guess, for holistic viewers who have an expectation of what an autistic stereotype would look like. But in the end, it ends up alienating autistic viewers who really want to see more representation for themselves and are denied that.
Just to build off what you said, to be denied the ability to get the opportunity to be on a TV or show or a film on the spectrum. When you look at memorizing a script and being able to like remember these scripts and lines, when you think about it, people on the spectrum have been nurses, post office workers, and all these sorts of jobs that they can handle. And in your mind, do you ever think that people on the spectrum deserve more opportunities in Hollywood?
Well, thinking through what you just said about reading scripts and memorizing lines, I can definitely see a lot of autistics being very, very good at memorizing different lines and scripts and being able to say them again, especially if the script or the subject is a special interest of that autistic. I definitely believe that there's this idea that people with disabilities they wouldn't be able to handle certain workplaces, but I also think that that's ableism and that we can't really deny people the opportunity until we actually give them, well, we never should deny people opportunities on an equal basis, but especially not if we haven't even given them the opportunity to try.
That's exactly right, Lauren, because if we don't give people on the spectrum an equal chance, an opportunity to showcase their skills, and even in Hollywood, there's actually a program with young, gifted autistic actors where they perform plays and act out scenes. And to me, it feels like people on the spectrum are like kind of the best actors because most of us mask all the time. So it's like I could do this all day. So acting is not like a big deal to any of us, right?
Yeah, definitely. So many autistics, we have to mask our autistic traits and pretend to be neurotypical all day. So acting is just another role in that sense.
And it's like when you look at the big screen, like movies like Music, the show Good Doctor, and the show Atypical, and the show Everything's Gonna Be All Right, they portray different types of autism, not typical stereotypes. But when you think about it, do you think that each show and movie portrays only one form of autism since it's a spectrum after all?
What's ironic is like a lot of the different things that you named actually have different autistics in those roles. Music is a movie about a female autistic, and then other movies like maybe Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, that's an adult male, while other representations would be children. And even Love on the Spectrum, they had some racial diversity and they also had different sexual orientations and men and women. But even then, there seems to be a specific personality that is put forth, a very specific way of expressing oneself, this awkward, childish, in a way, childish, immature, but very smart person, this adult child in a way, this kind of representation, the Sheldon Cooper. And that goes across the board with all, I feel almost all autistic representations, regardless of whether or not there's an attempt to include gender or racial diversity.
Hmm, you're exactly right. And when it comes to casting, especially for a specific role, there's like a trend of actors that are either like white males or being white period and being able to take these autistic roles. And do you believe that movies and television shows should be able to expand on the more authentic side of people on the spectrum instead of like a white boy that likes trains or cars, you know?
I definitely think that like the movie industry, the TV industry, all industries would definitely benefit from a more authentic representation of autistics. In a way, film, media, they educate people. And I think there's a big responsibility that goes into that. They need to educate people on what autistics really, all that we can encompass and all that who we are. So I think that the media would not only benefit from it, but also people, all the people who ingest the media.
Yeah, because when it comes to the media and films and television shows, it's like you got a job to represent individuals from different communities, whether it's the autism community, the LGBTQ community, the Asian community, the African American community, all these communities together. And like everyone wants to have a role model or have someone they can relate to on the big screen. It's kind of like that's kind of why I got really excited when they made Matilda and they Dre couple in the show. Everything's gonna be all right. I love that they made the first queer couple in television.
Yeah, it's just nice to see well-rounded representation, both for people who want to see themselves reflected on the screen, and also for people who don't want to really buy into stereotypes. I'd say the average person doesn't realize that their images of autistics or other groups are stereotypical. It's just the only thing that they've seen, the only exposure a lot of people have had to autistics in this example is through TV, through word of mouth, through what they've heard and seen. They don't have as much experience with actually autistic people. And so I think it's very important that those people can also see authentic representations as much as I want to see an authentic representation of myself.
When it comes to being authentic on screen, television, and film, do you believe that it would have to do with being with these Hollywood studios getting the wrong sources, like from Autism Speaks and all these parent or neurotypical led organizations that really don't really ask for the voices or the input from people on the spectrum?
I think that different production companies, directors, actors, they do tend to get a lot of their information from organizations that don't include the voices of autistic people, or they get their information from people that they know, parents of autistic children. There's not as much time spent really living with, talking to, being around more than one autistic representation of autism. And so then they'll latch onto this singular image and move forward from there, not recognizing the vast diversity of autistic voices and experiences.
Exactly. And it's like when you think about the experiences of people on the spectrum, you have to go through what you see on the screen and what you see in real life, because I know it's kind of like what people always say, that what you see on the movie or television isn't real. But when you get to speak and interact with people on the spectrum, you get a good idea of what authentic behavior we display in terms of socializing and making these connections. Kind of like that reality TV show, A Love on the Spectrum. It shows like a really authentic side on the of the spectrum itself.
Mm, I wouldn't say that Love on the Spectrum necessarily shows that authentic of a side of autism because it still plays into the infantilizing of autistics and this idea that we're just like grown children, like we're big kids, awkward, and I think that there was still a trope that they were playing into in Love on the Spectrum, and there was a lot of division in terms of autistic response to Love on the Spectrum.
You have a point there, because I noticed like when they were putting couples together, couples were mainly autistic, and I was curious whether or not why they didn't like match them with like neurotypical people that date. You know what I mean?
Maybe there's an idea that a neurotypical person wouldn't want to date an autistic person or that it wouldn't work out. That probably has to do with the double empathy problem where neurotypicals don't understand autistics. They actually understand autistics less than autistics understand neurotypical people. That it's really a twofold empathy problem. But in real life, of course, there are autistics with allistics and also autistics with autistics too.
Because when you think about it, when you look at television and real life, like people have this expectation and like idea that just because you're autistic, you want to date other people on the spectrum. And it's like just because you have two of the same cards doesn't mean they always match.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, I've met other autistic people that I get along with. I wouldn't date them. Like, I wouldn't just date someone just because they're neurodivergent. You know, you want to have things in common, like interests and life goals. Autistics aren't just autistic. I mean, we have a whole spectrum of things that we care about, like dislike and want.
Exactly. And it's like that one moment where like your friends are like, hey, this dude's on the spectrum too, and you guys make a good couple. And I'm like, just because I'm on the spectrum myself doesn't necessarily mean we're gonna like click.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
And it's like when you see all these romantic tropes on autism shows like Good Doctor and Everything's Gonna Be Okay, they kind of portray people on the spectrum as like it's like what you mentioned before about like children, but like having these fantasies of love and everything.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think that they play into that trope a lot, and it's very frustrating how it's played over and over again. Just like in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, it was played in that movie as well. Like that trope of the child man or child woman.
Child man, child woman. I like that comparison. And I really didn't know that Eddie Raymond played an autistic character in the movie. I was kind of speculating that the character himself was autistic, but they kind of gave a lot of hints.
Yeah, it wasn't stated in the film, but after the film's release, Eddie Redmayne said that he had taken notes and inspiration for his role from Autistics, and that he believed that his character is autistic. I think he did a better job in the second film. The first film, I felt like he was falling into some stereotypes. In the second film, I thought he actually was playing an autistic adult.
Yeah, it's like he really did his homework.
Maybe he did it better. Yeah, it's the second time around.
That's why Eddie Redmayne is like one of my top five actors of all time.
Oh, really? He plays a lot of different roles for sure.
Yeah, like Stephen Hawkins and I forgot what other movies he was in.
I'm not quite sure. I don't watch too many films myself unless they're related to my special interests.
Yeah, I think not him, but there was kind of like this other film about people on the spectrum called it's called Eddie and the Whale or something like that about this guy that liked whales and like this chick came and joined this new autism group.
Oh, how did you feel about that film?
It was pretty good, but I guess the main actor was Josh Hutcherson, if you ever heard of him. He was in I honestly don't know.
Yeah, but was he autistic in real life?
In real life, he had an autistic brother, but he wasn't autistic himself. But
Mhm.
I guess supposedly he wanted to take part in the film because he wanted to display and represent his brother on screen.
Yeah, so I think that actors who take on these autistic roles usually don't have ill intentions, but that doesn't mean that they're fully aware of the impact of their actions.
It's like when you go to each role, like you mentioned right now, that the actors don't really input or know what they're going getting themselves into. It's like you probably there was this article about Hellboy the movie where this actor, this British white actor, was going to take on a Korean role that of a character that's actually Korean, and he never knew firsthand that he was going to play a Korean role. But then he backed out, and then this actor called Daniel Day Kim took the role, and that was like the most authentic thing I ever seen in terms of having an actor know what roles to take. You know,
And when to just say, "Hey, this isn't okay," and we like you need to change that. I think that it could be hard for an actor to turn down work, but seeing the social responsibility is also very important.
yeah, it's especially important when you see actors on screen and television, and it's basically whitewashed a lot. It's kind of like that movie Peter Pan, where they hired this actress. I forgot her name. She's dating Jaquan Phoenix. I forgot her name. Lawrence. Her name's like a Christian something, and she plays Tiger Lily in Peter Pan, but she's not a Native American.
Yeah, I saw that film. It was not the best Peter Pan I've ever seen, and definitely I had some qualms with the casting in that film.
Yeah, there's like a whole alley of films that were not casted correctly in terms of diversity and having the right actors fit the cultural roles. Like the Great Wall, where Matt Damon was playing in this Chinese film where he's like the main character, and it's like there's many Asian American actors out there that would be open to taking that main role, and it's like you're taking away the opportunity and work from those that fit these cultural and personal roles they fit into, you know?
Yes, exactly.
And it kind of like brings up the subject too about people on the spectrum because it goes back to that where you would like to see someone on the spectrum take on these roles, but at the same time, I guess studios would prefer to have someone that they like, but I'm not quite sure what plays into that.
Well, I mean, I think there's just this idea that a non-disabled person would do just as good of, if not a better job as a disabled person. Just this idea that people with disabilities that we can't, take on these roles and that we can't accomplish them. It's not true. There's stigma and there's stereotypes and there's all kinds of ableism involved. And that's why we have to keep speaking up about it.
Yeah, exactly. And even to this day, we're each trying to find our way to represent and be able to spread more awareness about people in the spectrum, whether it's on screen, television, blogs, or doing what you do and just talk about it in a way where you're talking from your experience and your thoughts and just being authentic overall. Well, it was a great having you, Lauren.
Thanks for having me on. It's nice chatting.
Nice chatting with you too. Well, everyone, if you want to see more of Lauren's content on Instagram, then I'll be sharing her links on the bottom of this YouTube on this video if you want to catch more. And hope you guys all have a good day.